right, we are up. This is the Our Town with Troy By, North Alabama's podcast. And tonight's going to be fun and different. Sometimes we have repeat episodes in the sense of content. Similar industry, a marketing industry, a nonprofit that may be somewhat similar or the same as another. But I believe with Peter Randolph, who's here tonight.
Hello.
This is the first time we're talking about like emergency management and preparedness and things that hopefully people take seriously, but I would say many people don't.
Yeah, we hope they take it seriously. I mean, it's our whole bread and butter.
Yeah.
You know.
So Peter's been here for about 4 years in the Huntsville area.
Yeah.
Graduated from Jacksonville State.
I did, yeah. So I graduated in 2020, right there at the end of COVID, and moved up to the Huntsville area. When was that? Probably 2021, early 2021.
Okay.
And then my wife and I got married, and we've been in the area ever since.
You meet her at school?
No, we met through a mutual friend.
Okay.
But she's from Decatur, so she's always been around the area. She went to Auburn University.
Gotcha.
And then came back home, and we ended up meeting through a mutual friend, and her job and her life is up here, and that's where we went.
Yeah, and then you went to Jacksonville State.
I did, yes.
Which I still am getting used to, like the fact that there's a Decatur in Alabama and there's a Decatur in Georgia. And depending where you're from in the country, right, you familiarize yourself to like one or the other. Right. And every time I hear Jacksonville State, I just immediately think Florida.
Yep. And that's what happens whenever I say, oh, yeah, I went to Jacksonville State. Oh, Florida. No.
Like, oh, it's beautiful weather there. Yeah. Like, well, yeah, maybe sometimes.
When there's not tornadoes.
The other guest I've had on recently that's a Jacksonville State alum is Joel Lamp from the Huntsville Sports Commission, also a city employee. And you are with the Huntsville Emergency Management Agency.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, what is I looked at we'll go through the website probably a little bit later, but can you first to kind of describe the scope of the municipalities and such that you all serve or have concern over?
Sure, yeah. So the name can be a little confusing because it's Huntsville-Madison County. So we are technically City of Huntsville employees. So City of Huntsville does cut our check. But we are a county-wide agency, so we have jurisdiction over the entire county of Madison.
Okay.
And so all of the smaller municipalities, whether that's Madison or Owens Crossroads, Triana, all of those actually help fund our budget. And it's based off of a percentage of, the amount of your population and what you take in and everything like that. And so while the city of Huntsville cuts our check, all of the surrounding communities also contribute.
So they're funding. It's almost like I'm just gonna, for lack of a better term or structure, like a franchise where they're paying in these municipalities into the city, because then the city can pool those resources and use its leverage in a way to provide a higher quality of service.
Yes.
Is that about right?
Yeah, that's probably the simplest way to explain it.
Okay. And how often does the data get updated that you all reference? Like for example, on your website, I came across like the mitigation plan. I think it was published in like 2014. So maybe I would naturally think maybe the update's coming based off of whatever census data, or et cetera. But how do you all work from a data collection standpoint, or the currency of it?
Gotcha. So a lot of that is on a rotating schedule. So, for example, one of the documents that we work off of is our emergency operation procedure, or what we call our emergency operations plan. We call it our EOP. And our EOP is updated every 4 years or so, based off of the current trends that we're looking at. A lot of our hazards around the area don't really change. So, we're always going to be vulnerable to tornadoes.
Yeah.
We're always going to be vulnerable to extreme heat, and, flooding and stuff like that with the low-lying areas. So it really kind of just depends. But a lot of our big documents like that are on a rotating schedule. So anywhere between every year to every 4 years, somewhere in that range, depending on what FEMA's looking at and that sort of thing, is how we go about updating our stuff. And I do know that our what would we call it, the I think you said the mitigation plan or something like that. Yeah. So a lot of our documents used to be readily available, including our emergency operations plan, online. And available for just anybody in the general public to go and view that.
Right.
And since 9/11 and a lot of some of the security risks that we've been looking at, a lot of those plans are no longer just available to the general public.
Oh, because your adversary now can see weaknesses, perhaps.
Exactly.
In what you've published. That makes sense. Yeah, and it's interesting because terrorism is listed as there's like the man-made disasters or hazards.
Yeah, so you have
and then natural hazards.
Yeah, man-made, technological, and then natural.
Okay. Oh, technological. I didn't realize that was a category.
Yeah.
Of hazards.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay. Different than disasters, or are they the same? Because we were joking a little bit. I was telling you a little bit about a clip earlier I ran, like the difference between venomous and poisonous.
Right.
And there is a difference, but in our nomenclature, we will interchange them.
Sure.
Incorrectly when it comes to like, well, a snake, if something bites you, then it's venom because they're putting it in you versus like you ingest something like a poisoned apple, right?
Right.
So when it comes to hazards and disasters, are they often incorrectly interchanged?
Yes. So I would say yes. So typically a hazard is something that could happen to you.
Right.
So for example, Madison County has one of our main hazards is tornadoes. And we are right in the middle of tornado season, middle of April. That's when we get a lot of our bad weather. So a hazard is something that we're looking at that could potentially happen. A disaster is when that tornado actually hits the ground.
Okay.
That's kind of the how you would distinguish the two.
Let's look at this. This was a post on your Facebook page, just a link, and I was just almost born. I was born in 1975, but I was unaware of this from not being from the Tennessee Valley.
Sure.
I was unaware, and this is always what's fun about doing an episode and diving into some research is I'll learn something like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that in 1974 there was this super outbreak, which lasted from April 3rd to April 4th, and it produced more than 100 tornadoes in a 24-hour period. Resulted in the loss of 335 lives and $600 million in damages. Now, I would say in today's money, that might have been like, I don't know.
Significantly
more than 600.
Sure.
But, yeah, that's something that obviously is once in a millennia. Not a millennia, but like
a generational, maybe?
Generational or multi-generational. Like that's significant, right? And there's been obviously the terrible tornado in 2011.
Yes.
That came through the Shoals area, or is it near the Shoals area? Or
so the super outbreak of 2011 was really statewide. So we had tornadoes down in Tuscaloosa. There's a big talk about the Tuscaloosa one because there were several fatalities there. I believe there was another one near Birmingham.
So that was referred to as a super outbreak.
Yes.
In 2011.
Yes.
Okay.
There was one that went literally right over me. And I think it was in Moody. I was with the Boy Scouts at the time. And we were planning on leaving to go to New York City.
Okay.
And that morning we were, loading up our trailer, and literally, 2011 happened. The walls started bowing out and everything. The roof started lifting up, and then it was over.
Wow.
And we had no idea what had happened. And then we go out driving, start going up north, and there's just trees and everywhere, and right over the tornado. And then a big tornado here in Madison County as well in 2011. So it was really statewide, all over the place.
So how do you all then also handle a lot of training? And so for all the people like ourselves, we've been here 2 years, you come here and people might warn you right away, well, don't buy your house up in Harvest or wherever. That's Tornado Alley. You're safer, but then it's on everyone's mind, right? If you're a home buyer, it's a matter of like, can we really mitigate this risk? Where are we going to buy something? But then you also probably have people who just assume, that's not going to happen. How much is your agency tasked with public education and awareness when it comes to, like, no, this is actually kind of serious down here with the potential for natural disaster?
Sure. So, I mean, we try to do a lot with public outreach. So when we have big community events like Weatherfest, I believe, was just like a month ago or so, we actually go to those and set up tables and booths, and we pass out literature. And, we talk about, the risks of, what can happen in a tornado, how to prepare for that. One of the big things we always preach to people is when it comes to tornado sirens, you should have multiple different means of communication, because those are technically outdoor sirens. So you technically are not supposed to be able to hear them from inside your house. Now, a lot of people do. But, they should be relied on if you are outside. Gotcha. So you should also have, an app on your phone. You should have a weather radio that sends you out alerts. There should be multiple ways of getting those notifications other than just relying on the tornado sirens for outdoor warning.
And there's quite a number of those, right? There's a map, I believe, on your website that shows the locations of those.
Yes, I believe the current count is 132 or 135, somewhere in that range.
And just in this county?
In this county alone, yes.
Wow. How does that, as far as the density of those, how does that compare with the other counties in the state?
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. Okay. I do know that we base them off of what we call a warning study. So basically, we look at the population density and population growth, where things are kind of planned to be at that point as far as new construction and stuff moving in. And then we work with our GIS department through the city of Huntsville. We compile all of those stats, and then we try to pick the best location for potential new sites if we need to build any. And we do a warning study every couple of years.
So then, like like Weatherfest, are you then also tying in with just the local meteorologists at the TV stations and such? I mean, what's the magnitude of this when it comes to studying the weather?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a pretty good relationship with the media. They're constantly in contact with us when something's going on. We're constantly talking to them as well, in addition to the National Weather Service. And I would say the National Weather Service is probably one of our biggest partners as far as that goes, because they are the ones that issue the alerts. They're the ones that give us the all clear and things like that. So they give us weather briefings when they're expecting things to occur. And then we pass those along to our partners as well. So all of our first responders, city officials, elected officials, county commission, and that sort of thing, kind of try to give them an idea of what the National Weather Service is telling us and what they can expect.
Okay. Before we go too far into this, we should give a shout out to Carrie Straub.
Yes.
Carrie is the one that introduced us. Carrie was, I think it was episode 59, if I recall. And he was a former FBI agent and now heads up the Crime Stoppers of Huntsville. So that was a cool episode, talking with him about how they're going about working with the police department and others on either it's cold cases, unsolved crimes, or just trying to track down criminals. But he is also on the board.
Yes,
on your board.
On our board.
And so that's how we made that connection. So shout out to Carrie.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who aren't aware, we do have an EMA board. It consists of, I believe, 5 members. And they are they're appointed through the city of Huntsville, through the city of Madison, and I believe through the county commission as well.
Okay.
And so they're basically a representative voice for the county. And so that's just another level of oversight for us. They can kind of help point us in the direction that, the county wants to go.
So give me an idea of what the office looks like. Like who are you interacting with kind of on a daily basis downtown in your guys' offices?
Yeah, so there are currently 7 of us in the entire department. So we are one of the smallest departments in the county.
Okay.
Or in the city of Huntsville. So we have a director. His name is Jeff. Jeff is our director. And then we have a plans coordinator. And so his name is Jared. He's responsible for all of the plans. So when you're talking about our emergency operations plan, the hazard mitigation plan, all of the different plans that we have, Jared is the one who's responsible for making sure that all of those are up to date.
Here we go. Here's your website.
Yes.
So there's Jeff Birdwell.
Yep.
I'm now talking about Jared Cassidy.
Jared Cassidy. Yep. And then Bill actually just retired, so he is no longer with us in the department. He is enjoying retirement, and we're in the process of getting a replacement for him.
Okay.
And then Amy is our secretary, so she's the one who is primarily answering the phones and directing our calls and everything. She also handles a lot of our purchase orders and stuff. So if we have anything that needs to kind of get pushed up, a lot of that is initially sent to her, and she kind of collects those. And then we have our operations group, which consists of Chris and Candy and myself.
Why aren't you listed there with your picture? Too new?
I haven't gotten my picture taken yet. We are in the process of working on it. Jeff has already talked to me about it.
And what's your is your title also emergency management officer?
Yes.
Like them? Okay. And then we see Carrie and the other board members down below.
Yes.
Okay. So I mentioned Joel Lamp's name earlier from the Sports Commission, and I think that one thing that you'll read in the mitigation plan, right, or any city, any municipality that has a that deals with this is, have we thought of everything? That kind of have we predicted or we thought through? Do we understand any potential disaster that might hit us? And it was interesting where they're in business and sports tourism, and he was talking about how now that if you have like a massive soccer tournament in Lake Tahoe, for example, this happened 2 or 3 years ago, and it's become such that if you have thousands and thousands of participants, well, what happens if it gets canceled, right? This is supposed to be some huge revenue opportunity for whoever's putting it on, and you kind of only get one shot out of it in the entire calendar year because those teams are going to move on and compete somewhere else. So there's like insurance that they've created in the event of it being a hurricane comes through or a tornado or what have you. However, what they didn't anticipate were the wildfires in California and the amount of smoke that ended up they couldn't play over in Tahoe because of the smoke. And they, it's like, oh my gosh, like you wouldn't have thought about that.
Right.
As a potential issue that would cancel, right, in the ability to play. And does insurance cover that? Does it not cover that? So when you all meet and stuff going on, have we thought of everything that could happen? Is there still that? And let's say even 10 years ago, are we learning just from the recent past and updating our plans or our awareness and education just based on even things that just happened that we didn't maybe anticipate happening, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So a lot of it is based off of what we call the doctrine of all hazards.
Okay.
And so basically what that's saying is that there's no possible way to plan for every single little thing.
Right.
Right, because if we did, we'd have an emergency operations plan that's 1,000 pages long. It would be completely unwieldy and unusable and that sort of thing. So what all hazards mean is that basically we take the top, hazards that we could face in the county, and then we structure the emergency operation plan so that it is scalable and functional so that we can use portions of it for something that we might not have initially anticipated.
Okay.
And that kind of goes into NIMS as well, which is the National Incident Management System. Also similar to the incident command system from an operational standpoint, that works very similarly for people on the ground as well. So basically what that's saying is that the system is scalable. So everybody in the county, in the country, operates off of NIMS and the incident command system. You have to have that to be FEMA compliant. And so basically what that means is, let's say you take an accident on the side of the road. You might have a police officer there. You might have a fire truck. Well, within the 5 or 6 people that are on that scene, you've got one person who is the incident commander.
Okay.
And so they're in charge. they're the ones that are calling the shots. And then from there, they're making sure everything gets done. So what happens when you take that and expand it out significantly? Well, now you've got multiple fire trucks, multiple ambulances, multiple police. You still have a one incident commander. And so basically it's an organizational structure that as the incident expands, the number of people that are involved expands, and you also have different roles that are facilitated. So within the incident command structure, you have an operations side, you have a planning side, you have a finance side, and you have a safety side. And so as the incident increases, these different roles are filled because now your incident commander, your one guy that's in charge, can't physically fill every single role. He can't do the planning and the operations. And so as the incident gets bigger, the incident command support also gets bigger. And the all hazards plan is written similarly in that respect, so that it is scalable in the event that we don't think of something.
So let's use like a local tornado.
Sure.
It comes through Madison, rips up something. Help me walk through all the potential entities that might show up, and then of course escalate depending on the magnitude of the damage. Escalates right to that incident manager. It's fire departments, police, FEMA. I mean, can you give me an idea of, other than those logical ones, like who else is showing up and maybe then outranking or providing supervisory authority over the the addressing the cleanup and the rescue and all that?
Sure. So, let me kind of explain it to you from our angle, because
Sure.
Emergency management is going to be slightly different from what is occurring physically on the ground at a tornado disaster. So we operate out of what we call an EOC, which is an Emergency Operations Center. And so before an event even occurs, the EMA staff is in the EOC. We are monitoring the weather. We're getting briefs from the National Weather Service. We're pushing those out to our elected officials, police, fire, and those sort of things.
Are you the only people in there, or are there other groups that co-occupy that center?
So we're getting to that.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
so we
Sorry to
are
jump in.
so in the moment we are the only ones there. Present. When we reach a certain threshold, and we feel like a tornado is imminent, then or it's very high likely that it could happen, we're going to call in our partners. So at that point, we will send out a call to Huntsville Police, Huntsville Fire, Madison County Fire, the Sheriff's Office, Madison Police, all of these different stakeholders. And we ask them to send a representative to our Emergency Operations Center. And so basically we have a figurehead or a talking head, essentially, from each of those departments that come into the Emergency Operations Center with us. And so as emergency management professionals, we are not the ones physically calling the shots that are on the ground, because a fire truck or police or whoever is physically at the scene is going to be making those calls. We are there for coordination and support. So in other words, they have a situation going on, they need more assistance, they're going to call their representative at the EOC. The EOC is then going to say, hey, this is what we need, and then we help facilitate and move resources around to make sure that everybody gets what they need. And then at that point, if we need more assistance, we can go to the surrounding counties. We are in a 13-county agreement. It's called the North Alabama Mutual Assistance Association. And so from the 13 counties that are within that organization, we can call them, and they can send resources as they are able to. We can also go to the state and make requests through the state, and then the state will ultimately make those requests to FEMA as the event escalates and gets larger.
What is then? What is your daily tasking looking like right now? Like, what is it you're focusing on? I would assume some of it might be getting grants for funding for whatever projects and things are coming up. But take us it's 2024. You know, there's a short-term, midterm, long-term thing, I'm sure, to your job. But, you know, kind of what's keeping you up all at night? What's your kind of top requirements, top priorities right now?
Gotcha. So the thing that's currently keeping me up at night is the move that we are currently in the process of making to new City Hall.
Okay.
Which is not related to anything emergency management. But, you know, I'm the one that's been tasked to be responsible for making sure that everything gets boxed up.
Gotcha.
You know, we are moving the pieces that we need to move, making sure the space is large enough and everything like that. So that has been on my mind for probably the last month and a half as we've been going through documents, going through equipment, throwing out old stuff, requiring new items and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when I'm not worried about the move, the two big things that I've kind of been focusing on right now are our internship program for the county, as well as what we call a THIRA, which is a threat hazard analysis and risk assessment. And that's kind of been my focus as far as that goes. So for those who aren't aware, THIRA basically looks at the different things in the county that could happen. So we look at our hazards, and then we look at things that could potentially stretch our capability to the point where we need additional help. Mm-hmm. And so I've been looking at different scenarios that could happen, and it's a plan that's required for us to submit every 2 years.
And does that touch on each of those three, the natural, man-made,
yes.
and technological?
Yeah, so one is required from each of those three categories.
Which of those categories is your favorite, or where you feel like you enjoy the most when it comes?
Good question. I think the technological has been the most interesting to me, because we've been looking at potential hazardous material train derailments. And so, you know, if a train were to derail and a large quantity of something were to get out, you know, what does that potentially look like? And so we've been doing different modeling and stuff like that for how big, you know, an area that we might need to evacuate, and that sort of thing. But, you know, I'm just one small cog in the system.
Sure.
Everybody in the department, we all do this, not everybody, but the three operations people. So Candy and Chris and myself, we all have the same job, but we all have our specialities. So Chris is really focused on communications. He's really, really good at radios. So he's kind of our communications guy. He also handles all of the sirens. So the siren maintenance, when a siren goes down, he's the one that is doing the siren testing, making sure that goes off the way it should. If something goes down, he's the one that actually goes out and physically looks at the siren. He's also currently in charge of our CERT program as well, which is our community emergency response teams. And I'm also assisting with that. Candy does our environmental audits, and she's also helping with our VOAD, which is Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster. And that's kind of her function. And then I am more or less the GIS guru for between the three of us. So I handle kind of our GIS projects. And then, like I said, I'm also working on this THIRA thing as well as our internship program.
I think GIS, the Geographical Information System?
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Use Esri for that? What's your specialty tool?
Yeah, so we use we use Esri.
Yeah. Esri, yeah. I think everybody does.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's really another thing out there.
Not that I'm aware of.
So you have the corner of the market.
Yeah.
I used to do some geospatial work like 10 years ago, and as much as the customer really, really wanted to find a cheaper option, I think all the analysts that used it were like, it gives really good results. I don't think there's
it's really the way to go, yeah.
when it comes to like these trains and stuff like that, I mean, has there been issues in the past where cargo has been coming through our county? We're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, are you doing some sort of ensuring there's some sort of policies or those are updated as far as what can actually pass through on our rail system here as far as potentially hazardous? Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, so we don't particularly make any rules as to what can and can't go through, but we are aware of what is passing through.
You can advise, I guess, right, to whomever. Like, I don't know if you should do that. Like, at least provide your input.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not 100% sure about that. That is above my pay grade.
Okay, maybe in time.
Maybe, but we are aware of what is going through. Okay. So when I was looking at this train derailment thing, I was looking at what kind of quantities go through, because by law there's certain things that you can and can't transport, and then there's also certain amounts that you can and can't transport. So if you're over a certain amount, you have to transport it another way, as far as my understanding of it is.
Okay.
And so I believe Norfolk Southern is the rail line that goes through the county. And so they are the ones that provide us with a list of how much is getting transported.
Yeah, you were born there in Norfolk, weren't you?
I was, yep, around Newport News.
Do you say Norfolk or do you say Norfolk?
I say Norfolk.
Okay. That's a tricky one, right, depending on if you're from there or not, right?
I just say Newport News. It makes it easier.
Can we talk about the internship program? Like, what kind of interns are you looking for, and how many, and that type of thing?
Sure. So when I first started, we didn't really have an internship program. I mean, the city of Huntsville has an internship program.
Sure.
But EMA did not have anything intern specific. And so when I started, probably about a month after I was there, Jeff was like, "Hey, somebody called interested in emergency management. Give them a call, see what they're interested in." So I give them a call, and they tell me they're looking for an internship program. I was like, okay, well, we don't really have something at the moment. Nothing is, no program, If you were to show up, I wouldn't really know what to do with you. And then about a month later, another one called. And so at that point, I was like, look, as somebody who recently graduated not that long ago, this is something that's important to me. Because, that's essentially how I got my start in my experience. And so I talked to Jeff, and I was like, look, this is something that I'm really interested in doing, and that's something that I would like to put together. So between Jeff, myself, and our HR department with the city of Huntsville, we've put together a program, and it's about 120 contact hours. So if you figure that out, it comes out to be about a month long. And it involves, a project that the student would have to complete, something related to emergency management. So whether that's mitigation, response, recovery, preparedness, something in that vein. And then they'd also, be with us in the EOC as we do our day-to-day operations. So they would be assisting with helping out test equipment, test the sirens. They would also be attending meetings that we attend as well. And then they would also be working on this project as well. And so at the end of the 4 months or so, or not 4 months, 4 weeks, about a month long, that is about when the internship would end. There's no specific deadline. In other words, there's no cap. So you could stay longer than a month. But we probably wouldn't want it to be longer than about 2 or 3 months at that point. But yeah, that's the general gist.
So did you get it? Did you have a similar internship somewhere as part of your interest in when you were doing your degree at Jacksonville State?
Yeah, so it wasn't a official internship. It was more volunteer work, and I called it an internship because that's what it was to me.
Yeah.
But it was not through school, if that makes sense. So I did quite a bit of volunteer work with DeKalb County EMA. They're our neighbors just to the east of us. And because at the time I was living in DeKalb County. So when I had free time from school about once a week, for about 8 hours or so, I would travel up to Fort Payne, which is where they're located, and we would, I'd do anything they needed done. So I'd answer the phones. I helped update their emergency operations plan. There was actually a tornado that occurred in December, I want to say 2017, 2018, somewhere in there, that I actually got to work.
Really?
And got, actual hands-on experience in a disaster situation doing damage assessments. So yeah, there was a lot of, even if it was only, 8 hours a week for, probably close to a year, I think there was a lot of valuable information gained.
So you didn't get necessarily credit at school, but you got valuable experience put on your resume.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I got no credit from school.
Got it. So but they have an emergency management program at Jacksonville State.
They do.
So you were seeking out a school that had that? Because I don't know if I've really ever met anybody that did an undergrad in that subject area.
Yeah, so that's kind of a long story.
Okay. We got time.
Yeah. So I have been involved with the emergency management, emergency response community in some way, shape, or form since I was like 12 years old. So I originally got my start through Boy Scouts and an organization called Civil Air Patrol.
Yep.
And Civil Air Patrol has a big emergency services side to it. And those who aren't familiar with Civil Air Patrol, it's basically an auxiliary volunteer organization for the Air Force. So think ROTC, but not related to a school. It's probably the easiest way to explain it. Mm-hmm. But we were doing ground team search and rescue qualifications at the time. So basically, we learned how to go out and use a compass, how to set up a shelter, how to do basic search techniques, how to do basic first aid, all the things that you would need to essentially just survive in the woods while looking for a missing person. And so I've been active with that since I was 12. And so I was doing that up through the time I turned 18, 19, and I graduated high school. And then also at the time I was with the Boy Scouts.
Right.
And so I had the opportunity to go out and hike at Philmont Scout Ranch.
New Mexico,
yeah. And that was, I did that when I was 16, and that was a life-changing experience. Had no idea I was going until about a week before. And then somebody dropped out. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to take their spot and go. And while I was out there, me and another buddy who was in the scout troop with me was like, hey, when we turn 18, we should come back out here and work. And so 18, 19 rolled around, started, working at odd jobs and stuff like that. And then my buddy, I think I was 19 at the time. My buddy gives me a call and says, hey, I applied. You should go apply. I was like, okay, sounds like fun. Because I had completely forgotten about it. So I applied. I applied to be a cook in the kitchen.
Okay.
Because I just,
Whatever,
get me out there. So they called me. They were like, hey, we have a shortage of cooks. Come cook for us. I was like, okay, cool. So packed up my stuff.
Did your buddy get in too?
Yes, he got in as well.
All right.
Yep. So we were both out there. And so I was out there in 2014 and 2015 as a cook. And in 2015, I was like, I really want to come back in 2016 and work for the summer, but I don't want to cook. I want to do something else. Yeah. I've had 2 summers of this. And so I was like, well, let me go look around at some of the other departments. And so I'm walking around base camp, and I see the logistics department. I was like, logistics sounds like fun. So I walk in there, and I'm asking people what they do and everything. And they're like, one of our big things is our radio room where we do all of our search and rescue coordination. I was like, I've been doing that since I was 12.
Is it like ham radio?
No.
Okay.
So they have their own repeaters and everything.
Okay.
The Boy Scouts are very within their own bubble.
Okay.
If that makes sense. But amateur radio. I'm totally off topic, but I'm amateur radio technician qualified as well. But I walked in there. They're like, we do our radio room. We do all of this search and rescue coordination through here. I was like, well, that sounds like fun. And they were like, well, do you have your incident command courses? the ones that you take online. And I was like, well, I have 100, 200, and 700, and 800, and 3 or 4 others. And they were like, oh, well, apply, you'll get hired because you have to have those anyways. I was like, okay, cool. So I applied, and they picked me up. And so I worked there in 2017, and then I had the opportunity to run their radio room as their communications coordinator in 2018, I believe, 2017 or 2018, somewhere in there. I was out there a total of 4 years.
Gotcha.
And so at the end of my first year in the logistics department, I said, this is something that I want to do. This is where I'm meant to be. And at that time, I was like 23. I think I had not gone to college at that point. And so I was like, I'll apply. I'll go to college and I'll do this. And so I started looking around at colleges that offer emergency management, and there are like 3 in the country at the point. Like,
really?
There's basically none. Now there are a lot more. But at that time in 2015, 2016, like, there were none.
Huh.
And Jacksonville State was one of them. And I was like, well, shoot, that's like 45 minutes from where I live. Okay.
There you go.
So, I applied and got picked up, and I started in the spring of 2017.
Were you a good student in high school? Because I'm thinking it's rare to see someone do Boy Scouts and Civil Air Patrol at the same time. And in a way, I'm assuming the Civil Air Patrol was a nice extension to what you're doing in Boy Scouts, because there's Wilderness Survival Merit Badge, and there's canoeing and rowing and orienteering and all these things. But it's perhaps for you, it might have been like, I want a little bit more. I love this. I want more. I want to do Civil Air Patrol and just get to do more stuff. And then, oh yeah, there's this thing called school.
Yeah.
Is that an accurate read on you?
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll be honest. I was not the best student.
Yeah.
But I was also homeschooled. So if you ask my mom, gotcha. I don't know what she would say. But,
So was she like, you're spending too much time with those merit badges and Civil Air Patrol, Peter?
No, actually, I think she pushed me more to do that than she did my studies.
Okay.
To be completely honest.
More practical, right?
I guess.
She knew what he was
good
at.
So
there's a lot of kids that aren't going to be able to survive one day, like many of us. But
I mean, we all have to die at some point.
It's great if I remember my algebra. But
right. I mean,
saved my life.
Let me put it this way: I got my basics, and homeschooling does have its benefits.
There you go.
And it does have its downsides. And I don't think that any one particular method of schooling is necessarily better than the other.
Yeah.
It's all up to the kid, and what the kid needs. But for me, it worked out.
My one son, Jason, was in Civil Air Patrol for a little while in Virginia, and that was kind of fun. I went to one night. They would just bring in different people from different companies to just. In one case, it was like the drone technology that was. They were using drones to do like scanning soils, so that could then help a construction company better understand what was under the ground, right, and just help them dig appropriately or just measure things. I'm like, wow, that's really fascinating. Like just the additional education that he was getting through that program.
Yeah. Civil Air Patrol definitely has a lot to offer. There's 3 kind of branches of Civil Air Patrol. So you have their emergency services side, which is something I was really interested in. Mm-hmm. They have their aerospace education side, which is what a lot of people go for. So you actually, if you're in the program long enough and that's really a focus that you want to do, you have the opportunity to get your private pilot's license before you graduate high school. Flying was not something that I was interested in at the time. So it's not something I pursued. I was much more interested in looking at bugs and using compasses to find lost people in the woods.
So you never flew?
So they do offer a program called orientation rides, and so it gives the cadet or the student the opportunity to fly 6 times in an aircraft, and I believe you also get 6 glider flights as well. So 6 powered, 6 non-powered flights.
Okay.
And I got all of my powered flights, but we didn't have a glider in the area, and then when the glider was available, I wasn't available because I was doing other things. So that's kind of just the way the cookie crumbled.
One question that I asked, this isn't necessarily your boss, but somewhere Mayor Battle fits into the hierarchy, right, of probably your big boss in the city. But I asked him this question at the end of our interview. I said, "Would you rather fly the plane, guide the plane, or fix the plane?"
Oh.
And he chose fly the plane. What would you choose?
I think, that's hard, because I think fixing the plane would be interesting. Because at some level, I like to see how the cookie is made. But I think I'd rather guide the plane. I love maps.
Yeah, air traffic control. Have you ever seen the movie Summer Rental with John Candy?
No, I haven't.
Highly recommend it.
I was homeschooled, so I wasn't allowed to watch it.
Well, it's like in the 80s. I mean, it's one of John Candy's early movies, but it's at the very beginning, so you don't have to watch the whole movie. But he's like an air traffic controller, and a fly lands like on his screen, and he thinks he's lost the plane that he's supposed to track, and he's losing his mind. It's just a great beginning to a movie. It's just I'll never forget that. Oh, 1 second,
to be fair, saying that I wasn't allowed to watch movies is a joke. I was able to watch movies, but there are people out there like he was homeschooled and he's never seen daylight.
Oh, please,
that sort of thing. But
or the other way around, homeschool. Sometimes I think, well, maybe there was too many liberties, but that's fine. To teach their own. Or there's some continuum there. I always tell my kids don't operate on any one extreme.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Somewhere in the middle. Right? It's the balance that you need to find, no matter what it is. Let's talk about. I want to talk about the sirens.
Okay.
And notification system, because interesting point you made earlier, right? And an outdoor siren is meant to be heard outdoors. So obviously, if you're inside, hopefully you become aware through other devices or whatever programming you're watching that there might be some potential danger, right? But what is, I guess let's not talk about the outdoor as much right now, but what strides are being made on just devices? Can you talk me through some of, it's like one thing to get an Amber Alert. Actually, I was standing in line yesterday to buy a drink at a gas station, and everyone's phone goes off because there's an Amber Alert. But is there difficulty in the weather system alerts coming to the device, or is that something that's not foolproof because everybody doesn't have a device? So I guess the question is, to what extent is there to ensure that there are no gaps? Everybody is informed some way, whether that's outdoor or on a device. But if they don't have a device, then what's next? If you how do you get full coverage?
Sure. And that's definitely a struggle that we've been talking about within the office. I think that there's multiple different ways. So we can, as an agency, talk about all the different methods of alerts that you can get. But ultimately, just like any other preparedness activity, and having a plan and having a 3-day go pack, ultimately it comes down to the individual to make sure that they're prepared. We can't prepare for you.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So we do our best to give everybody the tools and tell them where they can go. So as I've mentioned earlier, there's weather alert radios, there's apps, there's TV. There's also city alerts through the city of Huntsville. So if you actually go to, I think it's City of Huntsville Alerts. If you just Google that into your webpage, there will be a page that pops up that says, hey, do you want alerts from us? And basically you just put in your information, you put in your address, and then I believe the system actually codes the alerts that you get based off of where you're located. Not 100% sure how that works, but I do know that all the National Weather Service alerts that we get also go straight to that application as well. So if you're signed up for those alerts, if the city of Huntsville goes, or not the city of Huntsville, if the county, anywhere in the county goes under a tornado warning or something like that, that alert will automatically be texted to your phone.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So similar to an Amber Alert, but not pushed out through,
yeah.
The government is pushed out through a subscription service through the city of Huntsville.
Yeah, and I guess I would surmise that here we are in 2024, you've probably done just about everything you can do using all of the current technology, and including outdoor stuff, right, to alert someone.
Right.
At some point, it's also on the citizen.
Exactly.
To want to be informed, right?
Right.
And I guess we've seen in many cases, there's always going to be the stubborn people that you can't take me. I'm never going to leave. I'm never leaving. Right. And I don't care. And I'm going to stick it out. And that just, okay, that's your choice. But you can sleep at night because you tried.
Right. Exactly.
Here, I'm going to pull up some of these pictures. I took these from your agency's Facebook, but I think this is some of the stuff that comes up in the feed, which is kind of cool. Just reminders like, hey, like, do you have it's one thing to be prepared within your home, but are you prepared within your car? First aid kit, basic food, basic supplies.
Especially with, I think winter ready is what's on there. Especially, I mean, anytime really, but especially during, a winter weather scenario like we ran into in January. If you get stuck on the side of the road, you need to have stuff.
Yeah. When we lived in Virginia and we got more accumulation, I kind of learned to always have a shovel in my trunk. And I've also told my kids, like...
I will say that's one I've never heard.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, there was plenty of times that I had to dig out.
Wow.
From just, the occasional 10 to 15-inch snowfall. And even if the roads are clear, every now and then you might come across a patch, slide off the road, someone pushes you off the road, and... One time I was driving someone to the airport, and they lived down more of a gravel road that didn't get plowed. So here we are, left our curb and gutter neighborhood, no problem. And I'm going to go pick them up, and then I end up stuck. Luckily, I had my shovel, shoveled myself out. But then I told my kids, like, a lot of times kids will just wear shorts all the time, right? And let's say we're going to Walmart. Like, well, what happens if the car breaks down? Right. And we have to walk.
Yeah.
Or we have to fix a tire. You can't assume we're going to leave, the house, get into our warm car, and assume we're going to end up at Walmart without an issue.
Right. Yeah. And then that's why I never go anywhere in my pajamas, and I don't understand the people that do. I mean, hey,
it's more common.
Yeah. I mean, if you have the mental fortitude to do that, good on you, man. I can't do it.
Here's one here. This picture. The thing on the right is like kitty litter, and it suggested like what I was just kind of talking about in the winter months, especially if like, hey, do you have something in your trunk should you need traction?
Yeah.
This may not, of course, melt the ice. Maybe it does. And then also these LED lights can work, and that's a simple. It's just I think that the idea of this post was there's very inexpensive ways to be prepared.
Yeah.
Any comments on that as far as like what you do personally, you and your wife, or?
Yeah,
any tips or tricks?
So being in, in the search and rescue community from an early age, I've always had a backpack, with stuff in it. So a change of socks, maybe some food bars, and that sort of thing. We try to have, all of our subscriptions and everything for any medications always up to date and filled. Mm-hmm. So that should something happen, we always have a little bit of extra. When we go grocery shopping, we specifically look at some of the things that, are more perishable than others. And so we try to make plans for that, and buy in bulk in some instances as well.
I think Wendy, my wife, who's in the studio, shout out to her. When you were in CERT, and we're also very much have grown up and learned through church and stuff, preparedness, right? And we have our goal is to have a year's supply of food in the house.
That's a great goal as long as you maintain it, and you don't.
It's heavy.
Let it go lax.
And the movers don't like it when you move, and you have you've got we dump the water out, but we're filling up. We got 50 and 100 gallon, or not 100, probably 50 gallons of water and drums and wheat and rice and all these kinds of things. But we also started having to make sure in our car have a backpack in the back that has a flashlight and a radio with battery powered radio and a change of underwear or whatever, right? Just whatever, first aid kits and things. And I've had to use it a few times, or a snack like a Cliff Bar is kind of in there and just rotate it.
Yeah.
And here's one. My mother is in this category and my father as far as disabled. And are they ready if you were to have care of them, or if they're somehow on their own, are they ready?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to think about, and that's something that we also do is we try to have outreach with some of the underserved populations. So, with the deaf and, the elderly and stuff like that, we try to go to and attend different preparedness meetings with them as well, and try to make sure that message gets across to all levels of the population.
Yeah. And let me see. Your pets. You've got 2 dogs, right?
I do have 2 dogs.
Two labs, is that right?
2 labs. One is crazy. I like to call him my little terrorist because he runs around and he jumps on people and he's a little hyper. And then we have our golden child who has never done anything wrong in his entire life and will just sit there and look at you, and he's super cute.
They're both boys?
Yes.
What are their names?
Cooper. He's the oldest. He's the golden child. He's our black lab.
Okay.
And then we have Remington, but we call him Remy for short. And he is about a year younger than Cooper, and he is a brown or chocolate lab.
So even though we're looking at this graphic, what do you do for your pets when it comes to preparedness?
Yeah, so we always make sure that we have plenty of food for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, once the food starts getting low, even to like 3/4 of a bag, we start making plans for refilling that. We also have calming treats for Cooper because he does not like thunder. We call it the scary thunder monster because when he hears it, he always goes and runs to the bed and hides in corners and stuff. So we have calming treats for them as well. And, we try to make sure that their water is stocked up and ready to go as well. So
yeah, our cats don't like the thunder too much, do they? And lightning, they'll just disappear.
It's so crazy because Cooper he hates it.
Yeah.
Like fireworks, thunderstorms, anything like that. He is nope, I'm out. And then Rem is just walking around, not a care in the world. He's a happy boy.
Yeah.
Doesn't care.
So. It's kind of a good segue. It's something that Wendy volunteered for, but what are the volunteer opportunities that you would encourage people to look into?
Yeah, so there's a lot within the county. There's a lot. So the first one, and we've kind of already discussed it a little bit, is CERT, so the Community Emergency Response Team. So that is run by a group of volunteers that we have. And we try to host a class a couple times a year, maybe once a quarter or something like that, as the need arises. So basically, if you're interested in a class, you can go to the Madison County CERT Association webpage and email the CERT president and tell him that you are interested in signing up for a class. His name is Tom. And basically, he compiles a list of everybody that's interested.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, once that number has reached enough to justify a class, he will send you an email, let you know, like, hey, this is when we're looking at doing it. Here are the potential dates. It is a 8-course class. And so, depending on how you break that up, whether that's one class every week or 2 classes a week. So it can either be a 4-week course or an 8-week course, depending on how everybody wants it split up. So when I went through the CERT training back in January, it was supposed to be 4 weeks, and we did 2 a week. So it was on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. But with the snowstorm, and then there was the National Weather Service spotter training class that we also attended. We took a break for that. It ended up lasting a little bit longer than that 4-week time period. But that's generally about how long it does last, is about 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how this course is split up. But that class will teach you the basics of first aid, how to triage individuals. It'll also teach you fire safety. So we actually got to put out a real-life fire with a fire extinguisher. It'll teach you the basics of the ICS course, or ICS, which was what we were talking about here earlier. So there's a lot of good information to be had within the CERT community. And then they also try to host meetings I think it's once a month. I might have that off, but they do try to have regular meetings where they either go through additional training or they, discuss things that are going on in the community and upcoming events and stuff like that.
Okay.
So CERT is a great way, probably be the number one way that I would initially try to suggest people to do. Another one that we have in the county is our ARES RACES group, which is our amateur radio emergency communications. So if you have a propensity for radios or that sort of thing, if you're a radio operator, you probably already know about it. But if you're not aware, it basically just allows you to communicate through FCC certain what we call bands or frequencies. And it's essentially just a secondary way to communicate should phones go down or something like that. And the ARES RACES group does quite a bit. They actually help us staff in the EOC. So when we have weather events or anything, the representative from that group will actually come down into the EOC, monitor the amateur radio airwaves, and pass along messages as they come across, so that it's just another avenue for us to collect data and information. And that's actually how Chris got his start. Both Chris and Jared with our department, is they were originally volunteers through ARES. And eventually they had enough experience, they went through some courses, and then they were able to come on full-time with EMA.
Yeah.
So that's another great opportunity that there is. And then the last kind of one that immediately comes to mind is VOAD, which is Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster. And basically what that is it's a big conglomerate of volunteer organizations. So there's Team Rubicon, Red Cross, I think Civil Air Patrol is also a part of that group as well. And so those organizations basically fall under a president of the organization for the county. And then as need arises in an event that occurs, basically we will call the VOAD president and say, hey, this is the situation that's going on. Do you have somebody that can fill that need? And then ultimately he will go around and call the different organizations that fall under VOAD and try to meet that need for us.
Do you then, how many is it hundreds that are going through these programs, like CERT, tens? I mean, obviously you'd probably like to see more, but what's the attendance look like, I guess, in the greater Huntsville-Madison County area?
So, man, Tom was telling me the number just last week, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I think there's over 1,000 trained CERT volunteers just within the county itself. Now, you have to remember the CERT has been active in Madison County since, I believe, 2003.
Okay.
2003 or 2004, somewhere in that area.
Okay.
But I think there's 1,000 current, and then I think they were averaging like 10 to 15 on any general meeting that they were having.
Yeah.
And then our class, I think 40 people signed up, and we had 20 in our class when I went through it in January.
Have you had to administer first aid in your life?
Ooh.
As far as the training you received, and then you have that moment like, uh-oh.
So not that I can immediately recall, or nothing serious enough for me to be like,
yeah.
Oh, which is probably good because I don't do well with blood.
Okay.
I will, instantly, I'll be out. I cut my own finger and I'd practically pass out.
You knew you weren't going to be a doctor then.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Which is why I'm happy to sit in the EOC in the basement and help coordinate resources and do that sort of thing.
You made me think of something, and I thought of it. I have a trivia question for you. I learned this from your mitigation plan.
Okay.
Do you remember the original name of the Redstone Arsenal? This is going to be my go-to now. I'm going to start like anybody in this area. This is going to be my go-to trivia question.
You know, I don't.
Let me give you a hint. There were two things that came together to combine to create the Redstone Arsenal, but there were two separate entities that were created in 1941. One was the Huntsville Arsenal, and one was the Redstone Ordnance Plant.
Interesting.
And then they came together in 1949, and then as Redstone Arsenal, and then of course 1950, Von Braun shows up.
That's
there you go. You start using that too, and
I'll do that.
If you're in need of like a trivia question, you know, who wants to be a millionaire type thing or whatever.
That's a good one, you know, because I
had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent most of my life in Alabama, and I mean, I've only been here for the last 4 years, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Well,
That's wild.
I didn't know the Redstone Arsenal existed until 2 years ago.
Oh wow!
Because again, it's like, you know, you live in different parts of the region, and growing up, all of our history, we were so, I guess, proud to be one of the original 13 colonies in Virginia, and you just learn about colonial America.
Yep. Williamsburg and all that good stuff.
And D.C. and you know, yeah, my grandmother was from Atlanta, but you just don't study the South, I guess, other than just the Civil War. And so, I don't know, or, you know, it's not like a vacation destination.
Right.
You know,
well, I mean, the beach, but you have to know about it.
Yeah, but I didn't come to I never went to like space camp. You know, I guess I knew about it, but I didn't have any interest. So yeah, for some reason I lived 46 years, and this guy I mentioned I'm moving to Alabama, and he's like, oh, the Redstone Arsenal's down there. I'm like, okay, what's that? I'm like, what do you mean, what's that? Well, and like, well, the FBI is building. Oh, really? Oh. So anyway,
I mean, I didn't know about it until I was probably 10 or 11, and my parents were like, hey, we're going to the Arsenal. I was like,
okay,
what's that?
Yeah.
And we were down in the Pell City area at the time, and so I mean that was like 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know where you're going, but okay, have fun.
I bet you. Well, there's lots of military compounds all over this country, and there's constantly a fort or a camp that I wasn't aware. You know, I'm not aware of.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm at like Fort Story, Virginia. You might know about that.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, it's right near Newport News.
Oh, well, there you go. I had no idea.
It's actually just north of Virginia Beach, like kind of down near Little Creek where the SEALs train. But
okay.
Fort Story, we went to the lighthouse.
I mean, my dad probably knows all about that.
Yeah.
But no, I had no idea.
well, speaking of the Boy Scouts, Fort A.P. Hill.
Yes.
Was a big destination.
I am aware of that.
Did you go there?
No, I've never been to there. Never been there. Never been to a jamboree.
I wonder how that compares to Philmont. I think Philmont's like the experience of all experiences, right?
I mean, I'm a little biased, but I agree.
And you were there for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 4 summers, but yeah.
4 summers.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there anything I haven't covered yet that you want to dive into?
Not that I can immediately think of. No.
I read in the mitigation report, tell me if this has gotten better. Like, there's going to be times where the funding's not there, and they had to go through in-kind donations and other stuff to kind of get through and do a study and that type of thing. But I think Mayor Battle has done. I think everyone loves the guy, right? He's doing a great job as a mayor. I think his ratings are super high, and I think he runs this. The things, he's like a thought leader too. They're just from a cyber perspective, they came up with Cyber Huntsville. Now there's like this new AI thing. Always trying to get out in front of things. And then when they do stuff, I think they do it right. Planning and really thinking through, how are we going to do this? We want to do this thing. How are we going to do it?
Right.
What was my point?
I think you were talking about funding.
Oh yeah. So are there? How is that still an issue at times where you're not getting what you needed federally from the state? You're having to look for. You're gonna have to be creative in a way and looking for different sources of funding. But talk me through that.
Yeah. So like I said, I've only been there for about 6 or 7 months now. But up to this point, I've never heard any discussion about not getting funding or anything like that. I mean, everything that we've needed or that we've put in for, as far as I've heard, it has not been an issue. Okay,
that's good to know. That'd probably be something that Well, I don't know, I might have to take that out if you end up saying the wrong thing. Like, because that's always anywhere. It's always about money, right?
Right.
And funding. What about you, Wendy? Is there anything I should have brought up that you learned in CERT or your FEMA stuff?
My question with CERT is, so like you do your training, but then do you, like, when has CERT or the other thing ever been called up and done something?
Yeah. So let me restate the question.
Yeah. Okay.
My wife asked, when do the CERT people get called up to action, if you will? They're going through the training. Sounds like 10 to 15 people are kind of constantly in the training. They come and go. When do they get, and have they been called that, to be deployed, if you will?
Yeah, so I think the answer is kind of twofold there. So I think as far as you're addressing, the last time that I'm fully aware of it is probably 2011.
Okay.
And that's not to say that they haven't been activated since then, but I'm definitely aware that they were active during 2011. But it's not just for responding to large-scale disasters either. I mean, this is the good thing about CERT is it's just as much for your own personal knowledge and for you to handle any type of situation that you might run into on a day-to-day basis, just as much as it is for, a large tornado outbreak or something like that where a large number of volunteers might be needed.
Yeah. We had a little incident in our backyard, 18 months ago, where my son lit me on fire.
Oh.
And accidentally, but I will tell you, in that moment, as much as I've ever learned about stop, drop, and roll, I was in denial and shock at the same time. And I kind of forgot, other than just like somehow flailing and patting whatever, it was weird. But I was not like I wasn't like aware of what I should have done.
Right.
And thank goodness he was there, and I guess fortunately for us, we're a mile away from the hospital and off we go, but there could easily be a situation where my wife's training or a neighbor, right, could come in and administer some first aid or apply some training that they got for a burn victim.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the important thing about training too, is you can learn about something and then go on your way.
Yeah.
But unless you're currently honing those skills and periodically refreshing on them, when something does occur like that, you should be able to muscle memory.
Yeah.
And do that. But I think it just takes a combination of knowing the theory and then also knowing the practice as well, and being fluid in fruition.
Yeah. What does your wife do for work?
So she works for a non-profit company in Decatur called the Center for the Developmentally Disabled.
Okay.
So she works with a lot of people who have Down syndrome and that sort of thing. And the organization has group homes.
Mm-hmm.
So these people are able to live in those homes. They have around-the-clock care. They're able to go to jobs, do whatever they need to do. They have somebody who drives them.
Yeah.
And so she helps run the day-to-day activities for those individuals.
That is an important job.
It is a very important job.
She's probably exhausted.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally, emotionally, right?
She enjoys it though.
Yeah.
So I mean, as long as you enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, there's no more perfect people on the earth than those that are mentally disabled that way, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
They're like just angels trapped in these bodies.
Yeah. They live the best lives too. They're always happy. Yeah. They're happy to be alive. They're happy to talk to people. They're just genuinely happy people.
Yeah. Well, I think we've hit it all. I can't think of anything else. Unless you want to do some fun questions real quick.
I'm down for fun questions.
All right. So if you have a girl dog, what are you going to name her? I don't know if it sounds like boy dogs is your thing, but if you have a girl dog and you go out, let's say you go out to a rescue and you surprise your wife. So hopefully she's okay with you surprising her.
She would probably be okay with me surprising her with a dog.
You get a female, lab, whatever, what are you going to name her?
I would leave that up to my wife because she does significantly better with the names than I do.
Okay.
I'm just not good at naming things. I'll be completely honest.
And that'd be a good way. Like, okay, I went and got this dog without your permission, but you get to name her.
Yeah.
Because she's going to fall in love with it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Window or aisle? Or middle seat? No one's going to ever pick middle seat, right?
No one. No. Probably window.
Okay. Cruise or all-inclusive?
Ooh. So I've only ever been on one cruise in my entire life. And the food was phenomenal. Love the food. Love the activities. I don't think I enjoyed being trapped on a boat for 5 days.
A ship.
A ship, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Boats go under the water.
So all-inclusive?
Right? I'd probably go all-inclusive, yeah.
Any particular area of the world?
I like mountains.
Yeah.
So Colorado, Wyoming. We went to Alaska on our honeymoon. I'd love to go back to Alaska.
Did you do Denali?
No, we saw Denali from the air and
Okay.
from the ground a long ways away, but no, I did not actually go to Denali.
Did you do like the Inside Passage and all that? Like, what did you see in Alaska?
So we went to Fairbanks.
Okay, yeah.
So we had an opportunity to see the Northern Lights. We did quite a bit of touring, just driving around. My wife and I are really big into geocaching, so we did
cool.
a lot of geocaches, which is one we can say like, hey, we have geocaches in Alaska, right? How cool is that?
Are you a Pokemon Go as well?
I'm not. No, can't say I am. But yeah, we also got to do I think it was an ice cave or something like that in Alaska. It was really cool too. The only downside is we picked probably the worst time that you could possibly go, because we went in April. So it is in the beginning of the summer months. So there's not a lot of snow on the ground. So you can't do anything like skiing or anything like that around the area. But all of their summer activities have not yet opened up.
Right.
So you get there and there's about a month of limbo where there's not really anything going on.
Yeah.
And that's the time that we hit. So we did have the opportunity to go to the above the Arctic Circle. So up above that. So that was pretty cool.
Huh.
And then we also got to pet some reindeer, which was pretty cool too.
In Fairbanks?
Yeah, in Fairbanks.
Is it the Chena River? The Chena River.
That sounds right.
We went on a cruise and we did. Well, it was like we got off the cruise in Seward, the ship part. We went from Vancouver, British Columbia up there, and then we did the land tour for 5 days, and we ended up in Fairbanks and then flew home. And on the Chena River, we took like a riverboat, and it was cool because they had like these planes. These people just have their planes in their like backyard.
Yeah.
And it really didn't take much runway for them to take off. And I don't remember. I guess they landed on the water or landed on the ground. It was like both. They could do both.
Oh, wow.
And they were just like, it was kind of an exhibition. Like, oh, hey, look over there. So-and-so is going to take off. I mean, it was unbelievable. They just like, it was almost like going off an aircraft carrier. And they just took off. And then they came and landed and like almost no runway and went back in their backyard. And then we saw the sled dogs. There was a sled dog team.
The sled dogs. We also saw those too.
There's some famous trainer that lives right off the banks of the river, and so as the boat goes by, she waves and does some stuff with her sled dog team.
That's so cool.
But yeah, we did go through Denali, and the mosquitoes were unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah, it was in June, right? It was bad.
Yeah, I will say that's one surprising thing about Alaska that a lot of people don't understand. You just think it's like whole ice tundra up there the whole time.
No.
But it's really not. So like when we were up there, the highs were in like the 50s or the 60s. And the lows were in like the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
But because there's no humidity there, I mean, we packed like bundles and like bundles of clothes and sweatshirts and, snow pants and everything like that. And we ended up walking around in like sweats and a t-shirt.
Didn't need them.
For a good portion of the time that we were there because the sun is always up and it's 55, 60 degrees outside.
Yeah, I think that was the only downside was the mosquitoes at Denali. But we did like rafting down that whatever river that is that goes through it. And it's interesting because you take a train in there and a train out. Yeah. And there's a train that fell from the mountain that's in the river. So you raft and they like point out like one of the cars that's still submerged, and it's kind of like, huh. Well, we're gonna leave by train here tomorrow and go through the same route out of here, and it's like, please not be the day that we
get your anxiety up,
tumble from the mountain. Okay, so Braves fan.
Yes, go Braves.
So would you rather have tickets to Game 7 of the World Series? Braves are playing. Let's say they're playing the Orioles.
Ooh.
Then or National Championship, Alabama. You're a Roll Tide guy, right?
Yeah, I am a Roll Tide guy.
Or Super Bowl tickets in New Orleans.
Okay, well that's easy. No Super Bowl tickets.
No Super Bowl tickets. Okay.
Done.
It's just like get rid of the flying the plane. That's out.
Yeah.
It's down to 2.
I think I'd have to go World Series Game 7. I think as Alabama fans, we've been spoiled with Nick Saban around. And so while national championships are something special, I think it's something that we've kind of grown accustomed to. National championship or bust, essentially, which is probably not the best way to be looking at things, especially for college athletics.
Yeah.
But, the Braves have only won one World Series in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And that was just a couple years ago, and I was at work, and I watched it, and I cried. It was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. So, yeah, I'd probably pick Game 7 World Series tickets.
Yeah, because previously they only won once, in 96, I think?
96, I think, yeah. And I think they went in 94, but they lost.
They won 14 straight division titles. Yep. I read a biography on John Schwerholz, their old GM, and it was just fascinating. But it's also like how difficult it is to repeat in baseball.
Yeah, 168 games is crazy, and then you have all the different injuries and everything like that.
Yeah, and just living here and watching the minor league system play, like with the Pandas, and somewhat paying attention to how their roster constantly changes, which means the AAA. I don't think the AAA roster changes as much because the AA guys are like, there's the prospects that are supposed to make it.
Right.
But, I mean, that roster changed, I don't know, and they play, 68 games at home, and it probably changes 40% of the time. I don't know. That's an exaggeration. But
there's a lot of movement that goes around in those lower levels that people just don't even know about. Unless you're paying attention to the sport.
Especially with pitchers, right?
Yeah.
So, to win a World Series, to win 14 straight division titles, like your whole farm system, it's not just your team, right? It's everything down to your single A and your scouts.
Has to be working.
And
then you're drafting, too. You know how lucky you have to be with your drafting?
Yeah, and then you got to spend a lot of time in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico because that's where the players are coming from. Cuba, right? Like,
yep.
You got to do some traveling. Venezuela. Did you ever play a musical instrument?
So I played. I took piano lessons for a little bit, and then I played trumpet in high school.
So could you sit down right now somewhere and play something on the piano? Like, what would be your go-to?
Probably Ode to Joy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, a very, very simple version of it. But I've actually been, so I haven't played piano in probably 12 years.
Okay.
But I just recently picked up Duolingo, and they have a music option on there. And the music option is the piano. So I've slowly been relearning the notes and reading music again. So that's been a lot of fun. Now, it doesn't help you with like your hand positioning because, with piano, your hands have to be in certain positions for certain chords and everything like that. So it doesn't.
So they tell me.
Yes. So you don't have to. It doesn't help with your hand positioning on the phone, but It does help with the music reading and understanding where the notes are.
All right, last question. Anyone in your life that you want to go back and apologize to?
The answer is yes. Most undoubtedly, yes. I just can't think of.
Okay.
I mean, that's very on the spot. I can't think of a particular person, but I guarantee you, there's something there.
And follow-up question: what's the highlight? Like, if you ever have a chance to sit around and tell your old stories and glory days, and your wife probably rolls her eyes because she's heard it a million times. But what's your go-to glory day story?
Oh man.
Biggest achievement, accomplishment.
So I'm going to tell on myself a little bit here, but I once climbed 7 mountains in 24 hours.
Really?
Yeah, at Philmont. Technically not something you're supposed to do. So if you ever go to Philmont and you're watching this, you're not supposed to do that. But yeah.
How high are the mountains?
They range anywhere from 11,000 feet, 12,000 feet.
So the base is like 8,000 or 9,000?
Yeah, base camp I think is at 6,000 feet.
6,000, wow.
6,000 or 7,000, I think. Yeah, and then...
Did you do it by yourself?
No, I had a buddy with me. So basically among the staff, there's a route called Black Death and Super Black Death.
Oh.
And it's called that because one of the mountains at Philmont is called Black Mountain.
Okay.
And so... basically, you start at one end of the property, and you hike up Mount Phillips, which is named after Wade Phillips, the guy who originally owned Philmont. And then you go down and hike over, I believe it's Comanche Peak and Big Red, and then you climb up Bear Mountain, Black Mountain, Schaefer's Mountain, or Schaefer's Pass, and then the Tooth of Time, which is, the symbol of Philmont, essentially, and then down into base camp.
Tired afterwards?
Oh, yeah. Legs cramped up.
Did you have to work the next day?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't think through that one.
Well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I did because we were on a 4-day on, 3-day off schedule.
Oh, gotcha.
So we planned it so that on our first day off, we hiked out there and started.
Yeah.
Started at like 8:00 at night, which is also something you're not supposed to do. So if you're watching this, don't hike at night at Philmont. And we started hiking up, and we started at night. And the main reason we did this was because there's no water stops. So like once you start, your next water stop is at base camp when you get there.
Gotcha.
Because there's no water along the route. So we opted for extra water instead of tents or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So we were hiking up. Everything was going great. We got over Mount Phillips, which is the second highest peak there. We got over Comanche Peak, went down, got to Big Red. And then as we were trying to get up to Big Red, we ended up in the campsite for Big Red. And the trail just dead-ended.
Oh.
There was nothing there. And so we decided, like, hey, we can either continue to wander around, because at this point it was like 2 a.m. in the dark. We can either wander around or we can lay down and try to get some sleep. But, of course, we didn't have tents. We didn't have sleeping bags. We were very unprepared Boy Scouts because we had no intention of stopping. Right. It wasn't part of the itinerary. And so we laid down, and it was probably... It was close to 35 degrees that night. It was a very cold night. And so me and my buddy just huddled up next to each other, and we shivered our way for about 3 or 4 hours.
Did you sleep at all, you think?
Maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I remember I rolled over at one point, and the buddy I was with was a little bit smaller than I was. So he had actually climbed into his backpack.
Oh. Okay.
Physically, yeah. I looked over and like his legs and everything were like in the backpack. Like he was like curled up. Okay. And I like had a little day pack, so there was no way I was climbing into that. But I did have my my rain cover for my backpack, and I put it over my legs because I wasn't wearing any pants. So I had shorts on. It was like 35 degrees outside, so I put those over my legs. Yeah, we shivered for about 3 or 4 hours until the sun came up. Sun came up, we looked around. There's the trail.
Now you see it. 20
feet away. And we got up and we walked, and then from then on it was miserable because everybody had shivered for 4 hours. We were cramping. But you
did it.
We pushed on and we did it.
You soldiered through.
We soldiered through. We got back to base camp, and we went out for burgers. And we got back, and my buddy fell asleep with the burger in his hand. I have a picture somewhere, but he is literally laying up against the bed, up against the wall.
That's hilarious.
With a burger in his hand.
And your wife's just like, you are so dumb. You did that?
Yeah. Probably.
I would do the same thing. I would have been just as
it makes for a great story.
Yeah, of course it does.
It's a great story. I would, that was when I was like 23, 24, 25. I mean, I never considered doing that again, but
Well, Peter, it's been great having you.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun. Appreciate
any final thoughts or shout outs that you want to give?
The only thing I can think of is, get your alerts, be prepared, put together an emergency go kit, have a way to get your emergency alerts, whether that's through a phone app, radio, television, city alerts, whatever, and be prepared. Excellent. Hey, well, all the best to you. Thank you. Look forward to letting Carrie know that we finally got together. Yes. And hopefully we can reconnect in the future. Absolutely. Yeah, I look forward to it. All right. All the best. All right. Thanks.